What is going on, guys? Jin here from CZeroMedia. In today's episode, we're finally installing these pretty coilovers on the 280Z. You guys have all seen how far I've come along with the 280Z build series so far. As far as the suspension goes, I've installed front lower control arms, rear lower control arms, as well as front tension rods, which is going to give me a lot of adjustability compared to stock and adds a lot of stiffness to the chassis. Now, one thing I have not installed yet is coilovers, and in today's episode I'm going to explain to you why I have waited so long for these coilovers. I've installed dozens of coilovers on multiple different cars, but this is probably the most difficult coilover installation that I've ever seen in my life. So in today's episode, you guys are going to sit back and watch me struggle as I try to figure out how to install these coilovers on S30. It's going to involve a lot of cutting, welding, and maybe a lot of cursing. So here we go. First of all, I am going with the Silvermine Motors coilover kit. When it comes to selecting coilovers for your S30 cars, there are a lot of options, but I went with Silvermine Motors because their coilovers are 32-way adjustable. It is a little thicker in diameter than other competitors, coming in at 22mm diameter, which means additional stiffness and additional strength to the coilover shaft itself. And also the price point is very attractive, coming in at about $800 or so. And FYI, if you hit up Silvermine Motors and tell them that CZeroMedia sent you, they told me that you can get a little bit of discount. So if you're interested in these coilovers, hit them up, tell them I sent you. And in addition, these coilovers come with camber plates already installed on the top, so you can adjust camber once the coilovers are installed on the car. And if you're wondering, these coilovers will lower your car by 1 to 3 inches. Silvermine Motors also offers extreme low package, which will give you additional drop if you're going for the Stance Nation Hella Flash look. But I chose with the normal 1 to 3 inch drop option. Now we're gonna get right into the installation because it is quite involved to install these coilovers. So out of the package, of course, you get the front coilovers, rear coilovers, and you also have these nice brackets that allow you to install your brake line the way it should, like stock. And what's unique about these S30 chassis is that you have to weld on the lower half of the coilover. This piece and this piece will twist off the entire assembly here, and it needs to be welded on to the hub, front and back, which I will show you. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the wheels of the car so I can show you what the stock suspension looks like. Alright guys, so here's what we got going on with the front end of the car. You got the coilover, or should I say strut spring setup, coming from the top. It is mounted with 3 bolts like a typical car, but the issue is here. If you look from the side, there's no upper control arm. This spring strut system is welded directly to the hub without the support of an upper control arm. So you got the lower control arm like a regular car, which you also may install, and then you got the tension rod coming in from the side, but that's it. The upper support is the strut itself, which is why in order to replace your strut spring setup, you would need to cut this off and then weld on a new coilover, which is why this is going to be a complicated job. And coming to the back, and don't worry about the upper strut bolt because I already lowered it, which is why it's sitting so low. Same situation, right? Got the lower control arm, but no upper control arm. Again, you need to cut this off and then weld on a new coilover. So here's the plan. I'm gonna remove this brake caliper. I'm gonna undo this cap. I'm gonna undo the axle nut that's inside here and remove the hub of the rotor because the hub is attached to the rotor. Take everything off, remove the brake shield in the back, and then I should be able to detach the entire hub assembly from the vehicle by undoing the connection to the lower control arm. And I'll show you how all of that works in the time lapse. Okay guys, so the suspension is out from the front side. Just give you a quick overview of how the S30 suspension is set up front. You got the strut, obviously I took that out. Sway bar here, auto tie rod here that connects to the steering rack over there. Got the lower control arm here, and then the tension rod that goes into the chassis. And there's nothing else, literally. If you notice in the time lapse though, I took this piece out, which is the roll center mod. As you guys are already aware, when you make modifications to the suspension system, you're changing the suspension geometry. You want to make sure the lower control arm is pointing in the right direction, and in order to drop the lower control arm, you can use a little spacer like this, which you can also get from Silvermine Motors, in order to make sure that your car is still handling and behaving the way it should even after it's been dropped. Now here's the fun part. This is the stock, or should I say stock renewed front strut spring system. I know this is aftermarket spring. I forgot what kind it was, but I know this is an aftermarket piece. The previous owner powder coated everything, and as you have noticed, there's absolutely no rust on this car. It's so easy to work on, and I'm so happy that I picked up a clean chassis. But for that reason, I don't really need to do much with the hub. Here you got the hub, which is directly mounted to the strut piece. Now if you don't have access to angle grinder or welder or any of that, and you want to get this job done, you can also get the whole strut assembly with the hub online also, but that would run you about twice more price than you would be if you were to do the swap yourself. What we're gonna do now is we need to mount this coilover onto the lower hub piece. So what we need to do is chop this off with an angle grinder. I'll probably use a sawzall as well, as combination of both, and then weld on the new coilover onto the hub. If you notice, this coilover has a notch on the bottom. The one for the rear does not. It's just a straight cut. So remember that the front has a notch in order to clear the hub piece here. Of course, I'll show you how the rear is mounted later in the episode, but what you essentially need to do is go ahead and twist this off, and you're left with just a tube. Here is the tube that needs to be welded onto the hub. You just twist that off and it'll slide right out. Now the beautiful thing about this setup is that this ID inner diameter is just slightly larger than the OD outer diameter of the original hub, which means you can slide this on top on the outer surface here and weld together. I know some companies out there, and I highly do not recommend that you go with them, where the ID and OD of the sleeve matches the stock setup, which means you need to be super careful and measure this carefully to the exact specified height, or else you will be having uneven height suspension system, right? Because this just slides on top, so it doesn't really matter where you cut it because it just slides on top. But if this tube is the same diameter as the original diameter, you need to, not only are you gonna have a hard time making sure that the height is correct, you need to weld on the side here and make sure that it's completely horizontal and clean insulation. So, you know, make sure when you're purchasing a coilover system for your S30 that you choose a coilover system that is larger in ID and OD than the stock one, or else you make this already a complicated process even more complicated. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and chop off the old setup, shave it off, and weld on the new sleeve on here. Oh, and I forgot, as for the rotor and the hub side of things, you need to undo these 4 bolts in here and basically just hammer the rotor off of the hub itself. I'm going with extended studs up front, and also in the back I already have that installed, as you can see there. But in order to install new studs, I need to get the rotor off anyways. And this rotor, as you can see, has a groove in it, so it's no good. But I have plenty of brake pad left in the brake caliper, so I'm just gonna reinstall this for now, because down the road I might want to go with 6 piston setup. But for now I'm just gonna reinstall this. I know the rotor is not in perfect condition, but that should be good to go for now. Oh man, I don't know why I'm wearing a white shirt when I'm walking on the Z, L228 t-shirt. I want to rock it, but worst choice for walking on a car, white t-shirt. Alright guys, here's where we're at today, and FYI, do not do this with sandals and shorts for your own safety. Alright, so I chopped up the strut and this is what you're left with. I also grinded off the powder coating surface because every millimeter counts. That's what she said. So I've already tested this on. Here's the sleeve, and make sure the notch goes in towards the car like so. Slide that on, and then we're gonna go ahead and weld these two together. And this, guys, is CZeroMedia welding. It's not the best in the world, it's not the worst in the world, it's just good enough welds. See that? Just good enough. That's why I love grinding disc on angle grinder. So what I'm going to do now is I might grind this out a little bit after it cools off, and then go ahead and primer it and paint it, because you don't want this rusting away, of course. Alright guys, so while the front setup is primered and drying up, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the rear of the car, which should be easier. I like to get started on the hard part and then move on to the easy part, and then the rear on this project is the easy part. So what I'm going to do is just remove these brake calipers front and back, remove the spacer, remove the rotor, and then my brake bracket is going to be exposed. I'm going to remove the brake bracket there, and then I'm just going to be left with the hub like it is up front. But instead of like the front where I remove the hub itself, I'm gonna see if I can chop this off on the car. I'm just gonna go in from the side here with the angle grinder and then the sawzall, chop this off, and then weld the sleeve back on the car without removing this whole assembly. Alright guys, it is getting dark out, but here is what the rear end looks like. So you got the suspension here, and then the bracket that was mounted to the hub has been removed, so now I have access to the strut. I'm just gonna come in here through the angle grinder, cut halfway in, and then take the rest of the way with a sawzall. Now one issue with doing that is that the shock reservoir inside filled with oil is inside up here, so I probably have to stop halfway, let the shock drain all the oil inside, and then continue on, clean it off, and then weld it like I did up front. Alright guys, it is getting pitch dark out, and I'm gonna have to call it a day real soon, but here is what the rear end looks like. I just need to slide this on top just like that, weld around it, and then put the top in, and rear should be good to go as well. Alright guys, here's day 2 of the project. The coilover in the back is in. I'm just primering and satin black painting the bottom of the coilover so it's good to go, it doesn't rust, and I'm just gonna put everything back in there together. This is what the front end looks like. The weld came out great. I painted everything and now it looks like it belongs there. It looks OEM. I'm just gonna put that back in the front and then put the hub back on. When you're redoing the hub though, make sure you grease the crap out of it. I've been just putting this multi-purpose grease in here. More is better than less. Just pack it with grease and put everything back together. Now another issue I noticed when installing these coilovers, and you can install aftermarket camber plates so that you can adjust the camber from above the car, but on the stock setup you got this lip up top on the strut power brace. But the problem with that is if you keep the stock setup, it's going to be too high in order for you to adjust the stiffness here, right? So what I did here was I chopped off the upper
lip, right? So that's gone, and then I painted it again with the same orange of the car, so it looks finished and it prevents itself from corrosion. Now you have a little bit better access to the camber plate from top, but unfortunately on the S30 chassis, the stock access hole here is just not going to be wide enough. You can do welding camber plates, you can do bolt-in camber plates, or you cut this out and add additional brace on the sides. But because I have adjustable control arms front and back, I am hoping that I can keep this at certain setting and don't mess with it so much, and adjust the camber and toe from the bottom of the car. At the end of the day, this isn't a race car, this is just a street car, so I don't care too much about camber adjustment as long as it's dialed in. I won't be playing with it too much. I'm gonna go ahead and shave the driver's side as well as in the back too. I'm gonna have to do the same thing so I can access this adjustment here.
Alright guys, and we are finished with the installation. It took forever. Let me show you what we got. And what's cool about these coilovers is that you don't have to mess with the spring rate. A lot of coilovers out there, especially for these old Z cars, only comes one adjustment, this guy. But in this case, with Silvermine motors, you can basically lock in the stock spring rate, stock stiffness up top by locking these two collars in and dialing in the exact height you want by locking these two collars in. So that's cool that you can keep the performance intact while adjusting the height up and down. This is how a lot of modern day coilovers are set up as well. And coming back to the rear, same situation. Got the coilovers in and everything is looking nice and pretty. So that is it for today's episode, guys. Thanks again for watching. It is quite involved. In fact, it is the most PITA, pain in the ass, coilover installation job I ever done in my life. But it's in. I'm excited to drive it around and really dial in the suspension side of things. I'm gonna take it to a shop, get it aligned, and tune the suspension as I would like it. So thanks again for watching, guys. Thanks again to Silvermine for the beautiful coilover system. If you guys are interested in this coilover system, hit up the guys at Silvermine Motors, tell them I sent you, and you should be able to get a couple bucks off your purchase. So see you in the next episode.